I'm walking through a ghost town, y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong, don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. You were lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page. But we still read that book, and we still run that race. Mississippi Racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi Racer riding out, till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi Racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi Racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay, red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine. I am Chris, and of course, that over there, that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing great on a hump day.
Mo, I feel like we try our best to just stop talking about Brandon Ayuk, and we just keep on coming back to the man. We got movement. We got movement coming out of Monday. Trade talk is picking up. The Niners are actively exploring a trade for the wide receiver. Trade teams were mentioned. Potential deals being in place or out of place were mentioned. Teams pulling themselves out of the running or putting themselves into the running were mentioned. Late Monday, early Tuesday, the Commanders and the Steelers basically said that they're out of the running. It looked like it was going to be either the Browns or the Patriots that potentially had offers in place. We were hearing Amari Cooper could be involved in a deal. We were hearing that there are some receivers with the Patriots that could be involved with the deal. And then this morning, we are hearing that the Patriots are no longer involved inquiring Ayuk's services. But before we get to that, then there's an interview yesterday with Christian McCaffrey. And while they're talking to Christian McCaffrey, they ask about Brandon Ayuk. And McCaffrey has a weird little slip, and he calls Brandon Ayuk his former teammate. And people are just like, what? It's getting wild, Mo.
It's wild. It's wild. Hey, let's not kill C-Mac. It's an honest mistake. I mean, there's so much of a circus surrounding Brandon. Matter of fact, any kind of circus in training camp while you're trying to get ready, you're getting ready to go into the preseason, is exactly what you don't want. So call it a Freudian slip, if you will. It's no secret Brandon Ayuk wants to be moved. The 49ers appear to be amenable to that, to try to move him. But until he's moved, if he's moved, he's a 49er. And I guess the real question is he going to take this sit-in, because that's the new thing, Chris, this sit-in actually into the regular season, because that's when it impacts the team. And whether he knows it or not, it will impact him as well. He's 26 years old, but is he really willing to sit out an entire season of his career? Because I do think that takes his value down. There's going to be a whole new slew of receivers coming out in the draft, not to mention free agents and so on. So I think both sides want to move on this, but it's not that simple, because you want to move, the Niners want compensation, and this guy, wherever he goes, they said they let him negotiate wherever they want to move him to. He says, yeah, I want to come here. I don't mind, but I want to be paid as much as Tyreek Hill and all the other guys in the top 5. And I don't know if every team values him as a top 5 wide receiver. Like you said, the Patriots, they've pulled out. I think they're done. They're out of it. They've pulled out. So I don't know if he gets moved. I know that there's the attempt to, but it's a delicate thing. The Niners want compensation. Brandon Ayuk wants a new contract. So it comes, it really, in the big picture, Chris, it's about money and how much, I guess, any team interested is willing to pay Brandon Ayuk.
Mo, I find it fascinating because the one thing, and you and I have been very consistent on this, and the NFL genius himself has also been very consistent on this. We don't view Brandon Ayuk as a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. Um, you don't even have to twist my arm to tell me he's not a top 15 NFL wide receiver in the NFL. Now I know he has numbers. I know if you look at his numbers, and he had a great season.
His
He had
career
a
year.
great season last season. All right. And what a good time for him to have his best season. And it's no coincidence, Mo, as you know, that him having his best season statistically happens to line up with him demanding all of this money. But Mo, is part of this the national narrative as where he stands in the pathalon of receivers currently in the NFL. Because as we sit here and you and I say on a regular basis, he's not a top 10 wide receiver. He's not a top 10 wide receiver. Then we look at list after list after list that comes out from respected NFL media, from coaches and players, from NFL executives, from Madden. Give me any list you want, Mo. Every list that we have looked at this offseason, made by anyone from analysts to players to coaches to execs to video games, the one thing that every list has in common is they have Brandon Ayuk in the top 10. So does the general manager for the San Francisco 49ers look at this and say, I got to get top 10 wide receiver compensation for him because the entire freaking NFL world is viewing him as a top 10 wide receiver, even though we don't in-house. That's why we've taken the stance we have with him. That's why we've basically told him to go sit in the corner and close your mouth and knock it off. If they get fleeced, they don't want to get fleeced. They don't want to come out of this being like, we traded him to so-and-so and you got fleeced. They got a top 10 wide receiver and you got a bag of chips back for him. Like, do you think that's part of it? I don't think that's the driving point here. But Mo, I think that has a little bit to do with it, because when the entire world seems to view him as a top 10 wide receiver, and you're like, guys, he's okay. He ain't all that though. Like, I think part of that kind of creeps in.
I think that definitely is a part of what's driving or what's holding up a potential deal. I think John Lynch, his team, they see it. I think they value him that way, and they're looking for potentially a number one pick in return and a player. The potential of a Cleveland deal, they want a pick and they want Amari Cooper. I don't know that Amari Cooper's not better than Brandon Ayuk. He's a very good wide receiver. Like, he's been is productive wherever he's gone. And maybe the only drawback is he's a little bit older. But if the Niners are a team built to win now, Amari Cooper would be a perfect guy to slide into that system. I'm not one of those people who's trying to tell anybody that Brandon Ayuk isn't a playmaker. I think he is a playmaker. I think he's a very good football player. But I also think his production coincides with the system that Kyle Shanahan has in place. I think he's a cog in an amazing machine, but the main cog in that machine is Christian McCaffrey, along with Kyle Shanahan's coaching style and the way he calls offense. And then the next guy in line to me would probably be, because it's got to be the quarterback, Brock Purdy, then Deebo Samuels, George Kittle. I get it. I've said constantly, Brandon Ayuk is the Niners' best wide receiver. He is. He's not their best football player. He's not the second best football player, but he is their best wide receiver. But I don't see him. I don't think you view him as, he's not Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill would be Tyreek Hill in any system. In any system, he'd put the fear of God in any defense. I don't know that Brandon Ayuk going to the Patriots, while it would help their rookie quarterback, how much would it help him? It's still a rookie quarterback trying to read defenses and throwing the football to Brandon Ayuk. Is Brandon Ayuk like a young Randy Moss where he could play with a raw rookie quarterback and still make him look good statistically? I don't think he's one of one. I think he's a very good player, but it's a league that has a lot of very good players. I don't think he's one of the elite wide receivers in football. And I'm an Niners fan. I appreciate everything he's done. I think he's a very good wide receiver. But if that trade goes through and we get Amari Cooper in return, my head's not going to be down. I'm like, we get a pick and Amari Cooper in return? We're good.
Daniel in the chat says, I hope they trade him to an AFC team for a 5th round pick or lower. Go Seahawks. But I do think that's part of it. I think when you're the general manager and you're looking at this, and it probably John Lynch has to be pulling his hair out too, because he sees what happens in his facility, he sees what happens in his practice, he sees what happens in his games, and he knows that Aiyuk's not a scrub. He knows he's a talented kid, but he also knows that he looks at his system, he looks at what they got going on there, and he looks around the room and he's like, we value Debo more. We value CMC more. On certain days, we value Kittle more. Like, he looks at it and he has, as a general manager, a very realistic view of where Aiyuk fits into that system. And then he looks at the outside role and he's like, can y'all just stop? Can you stop putting him as the 7th best receiver? And what are you all looking at? Stop. Are you watching our games? Like, right. Stop doing this to me. Because and you know that John Lynch, someone's like, they came out with another list, John. And John's like, great, what's he going to do this week? Because every time a list comes out, Aiyuk does something stupid because Aiyuk thinks he's a top 10 wide receiver in the league. And it's not just random fans that are telling him this. It's not just random fans. It's shows like Wake Up that are ranking him as a top 10 wide receiver. Matt, everyone and their mother is doing it, Mo. I feel like, except for me and you, the NFL genius, and John Lynch. Everyone else is like, you need this guy. This guy's a player you build around. And John Lynch is sitting here like, no, he is not. And now he's talking to these teams. And the Patriots are like, so what are we doing here, John? And the Browns are like, what are we doing here, John? And John's like, I got to get a little more. I got to get a little more. And they're like, do you?
And John's like, he's the top 10 receiver. Everybody has him looking at all the men. And look, the production says, if you're a numbers guy, his production will tell you, especially coming off of last year, right? He's a top 10 receiver. That's just fair. That's just fair. And even if you could predict going ahead, well, he'll pull out another 1,300 yard 10+ touchdown season again.
Not in New England.
No, not in New England. In New England, you're probably going to cut that in half.
Not year one with Drake May. You're not going to get 100 yards receiving.
No, in year one with Drake May, he's going to catch a lot of medicine balls.
Mo, we got a big show today. The NFL Genius is going to be on here in a little bit, and we're going to ask him. We're going to ask him about the Aiyuk situation and get his opinion on it. But let's talk a little basketball. Let's talk about Team USA. We got a handful of things happening overseas in the Olympics right now. First off, Mo, I think we owe an entire country an apology. I think you and I owe France some love, because it was just a few days ago that we sat here.
I know where you're going. Yeah.
We sat here and said that France has been a little underwhelming in the Olympics. That we sat here and said, the Twin Towers, maybe on paper they thought it was going to look one way, but it hasn't been nearly as productive as they probably thought it was going to be. And now France just knocked off Team Canada and is moving into the semifinals. The same Team Canada that we also said was probably the team that has the best chance of knocking off Team USA here during the Olympics. But Mo, Team France. Now, before we get into that, I also feel like, and I do not watch the Olympics like the NFL Genius watches NFL tape. So I am just going to state this, and I don't have anything to back it up, Mo, other than that's how I feel. But I just feel like you have these moments in the Olympics where the host teams, one or two of them just do things where you're like, whoa. And it gets a little more love because they're the host team. And I think this is one of those moments where it's like, whoa, look at what the hosts, like, it's cool. I love it for them. but I didn't have France going to the semis.
I didn't either. And I did watch a good portion of the game. And I hadn't watched any of their other games. I'd seen highlights, but the impact that the length they had in the front court impacted the game. It did. Now SGA, he did his part. He played really well. Murray did not. It was interesting because you can tell Team Canada came in with a lot of confidence, and they quickly started pressing. And I just thought France controlled the game. They just straight outplayed them in the length and the size. It impacted the game. Shout out to France. Like I said, I thought Canada would have been interesting because when you can put together a backcourt like SGA and Jamal Murray, that can wreak havoc on any backcourt. Even Team USA's backcourt guarding those particular players could open up other opportunities for their teammates because of what they can do in terms of shot creation. So, look, shout out to France. Maybe we're the only ones that view it as an upset, but I thought it was a major upset, and I mean, great for the host.
So we got France and Germany. We got the United States and Serbia. Now you take a look between France and Germany, and no disrespect to Serbia, and the United States. But when you take a look at those three games right there, what if you're the NBA, Mo? You gotta be smiling a little bit, right? If you're the NBA, you gotta be like, hey, when we say we got the best players in the world that play in the National Basketball Association, take a look at the Olympic stage. So, Mo, if you're the NBA, this is a win for them, is it not?
Absolutely. Like you said, look at what it's setting up. The Olympics, the medal round is set up for basically most of the NBA players collecting medals, right? Like we have the best players in the world. So yeah, I think at some point Adam Silver will run some kind of ad that points that out. He'll say congratulations to, I'm assuming, Team USA, but all the other great Olympians that represent their country that are also representing the NBA, so on and so on. So yeah, I think it's a great ad campaign for the NBA that so many NBA players and their teams are doing so well.
Other news coming from the Olympics: KD takes the scoring record, the all-time scoring record in the Olympics. Big moment for him personally. Mo, I am a KD guy. I have nothing against Kevin Durant. I really, really don't. But I feel like every time, and he doesn't have a ton of these moments, but he is a great basketball player. He has been a great basketball player on the world stage. He has been a great basketball player in the NBA. Remember, we are not that far removed from the conversation that was legitimately happening during his run with the Golden State Warriors, where people were saying, is it LeBron 1 and KD 1A? That was a legitimate conversation people were having for a couple of years. I'm not saying that it was true. I'm just saying they were having the conversation. That is where KD was ranking up as far as the NBA universe was concerned. And then obviously he leaves the Warriors. A bunch of things happened after that. There were some injuries in there as well. And it is what it is. It has played out the way that it's played out. But I feel like every time KD does something where he's getting all this praise and he's getting all this acknowledgement, it just seems weird. I look at it and I'm just like, why don't I feel better about him getting these accolades? I think he seems a little uncomfortable in the moment sometimes too. And then I think because he starts getting these accolades, we immediately have to jump to the conversation of how great is KD? And then we start having that. And I don't think we have to have that conversation, Mo. I think we just acknowledge the moment that he did something. We don't have to make it bigger or connect it to other things. But some reason we do with KD, and then we try to take whatever that one thing was and then stack it on the resume to kind of push him up. And in this situation, why are we doing that? This is the Olympics. This is world basketball competition. It has nothing to do with what he does on the NBA side, but yet people take it and they try to throw it over and be like, so look at KD, see, this is how I'm what? It's weird. I feel like people do weird things when KD has these little moments where he breaks a record or he accomplishes something.
Yeah, and it's almost like we have to be reminded how great a player he's been, how transcendent a player he's been, and we don't. Um, and when he accomplishes something like this, some people seem surprised. I'm not surprised at all. He's been a transcendent player. He will go down, and this is weird to say in the era because you if you get caught up in just numbers, Kevin Durant's not going to be the NBA's all-time leading scorer. He's not going to be the second all-time leading scorer, if I had to guess, or third. But he is one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. But more than likely, is he going to play 20 years? I'm going to say no. But think of all that he's accomplished and what he's done. He's been an MVP. He's been a finals MVP. Like, I'm with you. I don't mind anybody getting their flowers. But I feel like even KD's awkward when someone throws him the flowers, like, because he's kind of like, he said it, I'm Kevin Durant. I think people know who I am. And when you try to add extra accolades to his resume, I'm with you. I'm a KD guy. I think what people are trying to do sometimes is they're trying to put him in a conversation that, as great as he's been, he's not in that conversation. He's not. I get it. We try to elevate guys immediately there. As great as he's been, he's not in that conversation.
So that begs the question, where does he end up? Let's say he doesn't win another title. He ends his career with Phoenix. You know, they never make it to a finals. Maybe they have one Western Conference Finals push in them that they end up losing. He doesn't get another MVP. He plays good. He plays good basketball. Say he stays healthy. He stays healthy for the rest of his career. You know, he plays another 2, 3, 4 years, solid years. But that's where he peaks. He makes the playoffs 3 out of 4 times. No finals appearances, no MVP type seasons, good seasons, not great. When it's all said and done, Mo, and you're looking at KD, and obviously we're gonna focus on the Golden State years, because that was the run, right? That was the window coming out of his run with OKC.
Right.
And then going into his run with Golden State, where they were like KD and LeBron 1 and 1A. That was the moment where people thought KD was going to take the torch and he was going to be the standard bearer for the next 5, 6, 7 years in the NBA. Obviously, it didn't turn out to be that way. Is he a top 10 player overall? Top 20 player overall? Where does it all shake out with KD when it's all said and done? Because again, you know, you can't take away the fact that you looked at him at times, Mo, and he could do anything he wanted. He could get any shot that he wanted. There were times where Kevin Durant could not be stopped. And then there were times where Kevin Durant was his own worst enemy. Where do you have him outlining what we just said? He plays another 2, 3, 4 years, no titles, no MVPs, playoffs most of those seasons, no Western Conference Finals, besides maybe one appearance. Where do you have him overall?
Look, I think he's no worse right now than top 15. And I think when it's all said and done, he may move up, but he would need to do something major to me to elevate himself into the top 10. I don't think he's in the top 10. The interesting thing is, because you know how people like to look at numbers and go and make comparisons. I can see KD at age 38, at age 39, still averaging 26, 27 points a game if he can remain healthy. That wouldn't stun me. But I think that goes hand in hand with not that just guys have better nutritions, they train better. The league is completely different. Guys play longer, right? There's guys that play longer at a higher level. Like we're talking about KD and Steph. They're both on the other side of 35, and they're playing. You know what I mean? And we're still talking about like they're still two of the great players in the. LeBron's 40. He's still playing at a high level. So I think KD's going to, maybe if he doesn't win another title, and I'm going to assume boldly, I don't even think it's boldly, that if he's going to be in Phoenix, he's not going to win a title. But does that mean he won't be all NBA for 3 more years in a row? Still, average 27, 28, which again, that all adds to his resume when it's all said and done. I think in the bigger picture, the bottom line, do I think he cracks the top 10? I don't think so, but I think there will be some who will try to elevate him into the top 10, and they'll explain and they'll go, well, you have to understand, Mo, he played in the LeBron era and the Steph era, and I understand all that. I do. But that's called your that's called your competition. That's called your peers. That's the way that works. I don't think it's a slap in the face to say, well, he's top 12 or top 15. If somebody wanted to make the argument that he's a top 10 player, Chris, who are you moving out?
Wasn't that always the question? Like when you start making these top 10 lists and you're putting all these players down, and you're looking at like who the acceptable established top 10 or top 12 guys are.
Right.
And you're saying, okay, we're going to take KD and we're going to put him into this group of 12, and we're going to create a top 10 from this 12. Who are you taking out of the 12? Like, are there 3 guys that you can take out of there? Are there 2 guys who I don't know. And when I look at like most people's established top 10 lists that don't already include KD, Mo, I'm very hard pressed to be like, well, clearly KD's better than this. Like most times, most reasonable top 10 lists, you can't do that with, because you look at it and you go, well, no, he's not better than any of these 10 people. And for most of the people on that list, it isn't even really a conversation, Mo. It's one of those KD or them, and you're like, them. And you don't even really got to think about it that hard. Right. You don't really start having, in my opinion, serious KD conversations until you get to like 13, 14, 15, 16. And you're like, oh, I could see, if KD does what he does the next couple of years, I can see him being 15th. I can see him being 14th. I don't think you start having those conversations until you're moving towards the bottom half of the top 20 as opposed to the bottom half of the top 10. And that's the bottom half. For people who are saying KD is top 5 all time, we can't have a conversation, because I can't have a conversation with someone, Mo, that can't even bring reality into the conversation.
Yeah,
there is no reality where KD is a top 5 player all time in the NBA. Now, maybe, Mo, you could have said trajectory. Maybe 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago, you could have said, hey, if some things line up, this could be I'll take that he could have been on that path conversation, but that path has since been cemented. And that now is what we are looking at when we are judging him. And that's not where we are, Mo.
No, and the thing is, so what do a lot of people do? At least some of the younger members of the media, the younger members of the podcast community and such, they try to turn it into a one-on-one thing. Well, KD versus Larry Bird, he probably beat Larry Bird. Larry Bird couldn't go, or KD with bust magic, he couldn't stop. That's not how basketball is played. If you take Kevin Durant and put him on the floor with peak Larry Bird, and you put them on the floor with 8 other guys, Larry Bird's going to be as good or better than Kevin Durant. He is. He won't be as athletic, but we're talking about the game of basketball. He will stand out and be the best player on that floor, as will Magic Johnson. It's not a knock on Kevin Durant to say he's not better than Larry Bird. I think that's funny when somebody goes, the insult. That's not an insult. It's not an insult to say, well, what are you talking about? KD can cross. He can handle the rock. He's much better than Tim Duncan. They're completely different position players. I think if you want to make the case, KD's more skilled. KD's more skilled than a lot of guys in the top 10. It doesn't make you, but your skill by default doesn't make you a better player. It makes you more skilled. I hate having that argument, because I've heard people make the argument. I'm going, look, there are a lot of centers, Chris, and you know this, that are much more skilled, more honed than Shaquille O'Neal. There are not a lot of centers more dominant than Shaquille O'Neal. Like, it's a completely different thing. Like, you can tell me, like, he can shoot the jump shot, he can run the pick and pop. All those things are great. And then Shaq, all he does is go down there and get your entire team in foul trouble and score 30 points, get 13 rebounds. That's what he does. Giannis is very similar. You and I would agree. Isn't Anthony Davis more skilled, more well-rounded, more honed than Giannis? But he's not a better basketball player. He's not. He doesn't have the same impact that Giannis has on a game. It's hard to explain these things. It's the argument that people make with point guards with Kyrie when they go, well, he's the most talented point guard ever. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue you when you talk about his talent. But then when you look at the career and how it's played out, he's not the best point guard ever. He's not the second or third or fourth best point guard ever. That's where I'm at. I'm judging KD off of what I saw those guys do with their peers and what kind of players they were. I don't know how he cracks the top 10. He just doesn't. And really, while I think he was the best player on those Golden State teams, it was still Steph Curry's team. It was Steph Curry's team. And I think people they kind of forget about that. You and I agree. Matter of fact, you're the one that got me to look at Steph in a different light. Steph Curry, not a transcendent athlete, not a 40-inch vertical, not the strongest, or all those things. But you pointed out something simple. He literally changed the game of basketball. When I was playing basketball in high school, and maybe you could relate to, if I came down and jacked a 35-footer, I'm getting yanked. I'm getting yanked and yelled at, and everybody would agree with what I'm getting yelled at. Steph made it comfortable for guys who have that kind of range to just pull up, and it's considered a good shot. Even the analytic nerds go, "That's a great shot." That's what Steph Curry did, and that's amazing. When you change the game, yeah, you're top 10.
Mo, it's almost the conversation that we deal with when we're talking about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is so talented on the football field with what he is able to do, and he does some things that other quarterbacks will never be able to do with his raw athleticism. And then sometimes with Lamar Jackson, you have to temper the conversation because although he is a walking highlight reel, that doesn't necessarily mean he is the best quarterback in the league or he's going to go down in history as a top 10 quarterback all time, even though you can easily say, well, look, Lamar can do things that Montana and Young and Marino and Elway could never dream of. You're right. He could. He can. There are things Lamar Jackson can do on a football field that you can rattle off a bunch of Hall of Fame quarterbacks' names, and I can acknowledge they could never do that. Never could dream about doing that. But his amazing athleticism, his highlight reel stuff, that's one aspect to who he is as a player. KD had that. People could talk about KD and be like, "Oh my God!" Like there are nights, there are weeks, there are months where KD looks like he's the best player in the National Basketball Association. You're right. I agree with all that. But the ability to do it doesn't mean that he's there. It doesn't mean you anoint him. He has to do it in a sense of what is he accomplishing? What is his team? It's so much more than that. And I think that's what people struggle with. I think they look at things like, well, if he like you said, if him and Bird went one-on-one, great. We don't do that. we don't have people go one-on-one. Isn't right. The same conversation? Well, if MJ played LeBron, great. Okay, that's never going to happen. So talk to me about this. Talk to me about, okay, if you put Dan Marino on this team, what would that team look like? If you put Lamar Jackson on, have those conversations with me.
Sure.
Those are conversations I'll have.
Chris, you could say, put Dan Marino on Montana's Niners and Bill Walsh's offense. I've already told you, if Dan Marino was in that offense, in that system, he's going to win multiple Super Bowls. I don't know that he wins more than Montana, but I know that he's going to win multiple Super Bowls because he was great on his own. But if you're going to give him Bill Walsh in that system with that freedom, with those weapons, not to mention a very good defense, Dan Marino is going to have, along with his numbers, he's going to have a lot of Super Bowls on his resume. That's what I believe. Now, I don't know that, but that's what I believe to be so.
Let's get the NFL genius in here. We got a couple more basketball things to talk about, but I'm sure he has opinion on these things. So we're going to push the button. The background's going to change. He's going to pop up on the screen. Gene, welcome to the show this morning, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am well, Gene. We got a couple more Olympic things to talk about. The first place I want to go with is this. Devin Booker dug up some quotes that ran wild not that long ago that came from Noah Lyles. We all remember them. Noah was upset that NBA players were referring to themselves as world champions, that the media is referring to NBA players as world champions because the NBA is not a world sport. It is the United States. And he is an Olympic athlete, and he competes on a world stage. And if he wins a gold medal or he wins a competition, he is a world champion. Nothing against NBA guys, Gene, but they're NBA champions. They're not world champions. Booker disagreed with it at the time. He was very vocal about it. And as Team USA is in the semifinals and they're looking to become world champions in the Olympics, someone asked him about it, and he held his ground, Gene. He said that I feel like the best talent in the world is in the NBA. Being an NBA champion is harder to do. Gene, is it harder to be an NBA champion than it is to win a gold medal in the Olympics?
100%. It's 100% harder to be an NBA world champion. And I'll say world champion, and I'll compete, and I'll keep saying world champion, because if you put the Spanish national team, who was number 1 ranked FIBA, going into this Olympics in the NBA, they would have the worst winning percentage in the history of basketball. That's all you have to think. No, if you put the Spanish national team in the NBA, they'd have the worst winning percentage in the history of basketball. They'd be the worst. They'd be worse than the Bobcats. They'd be worse than anybody. The Hornets, sorry. They'd be terrible. So world champions of what? Which Noah Lyles likes to claim. The world champions, the NBA champions, is much harder to do than winning. The United States, if they play right, they should never have a game within 10 points.
Right.
Like, they beat Serbia twice now. They'll play them a third time. They haven't had a game within single digits versus them. They should dominate them again. And then they'll go on to the finals to take on Victor Wembanyama or Germany, and they should beat them by double digits. It's not close. It's not even remotely close. I think that if you took the Olympic teams and put them in the NBA, you would see the difference.
Mo, we look at the Olympics this year with Team USA, and it was an intentional effort. It was an intentional effort by the stars of the NBA, basically coming together and saying, we're going to go do this. We're going to go win a gold medal. We are going to reassert our dominance on the world stage. And Mo, that's exactly what they have done thus far, which is great for this summer and this version of the Summer Olympics. But Mo, you have to ask yourself, where does this put us moving forward? Is this going to be kind of the digging the heels in the sand move, where when we come back to the Olympics next time around, you're going to have that next crop of NBA players who are like, we got to go defend it. We got to go defend it. We did it last time we were there, and it's important to us, and we're going to follow in the footsteps of Steph and LeBron and KD. And who knows? Maybe LeBron will still be playing. You never know with LeBron. Right. But is it going to be the rallying cry every time the Summer Olympics come around from the current top NBA guys of let's go do this? Or are we going to fall back into the I would really like some time off?
You know what? I trust this young group of stars that are coming up in the NBA. So I believe in Anthony Edwards. I believe in Tyrese Maxey and Jalen Brunson and young guys like that they're going to take the baton and carry on and go out there with pride and represent the country. I'm not worried about that at all. We have an incredible group of young, talented stars coming up that are going to carry the mantle. So I'm not concerned with them being motivated or representing their country at all.
And Gene, we see younger players from other countries every time the Olympics roll around. It's not a question. They are playing for their home team every time. The only question is us. The only question that ever happens is, well, which U.S. guys are going to play, which U.S. guys aren't going to play. But every big star in the NBA from any other national team, it's not a question. It's they're going to lead their team into the Olympics, and then we'll see who shows up for Team USA, and then we'll figure out who the real favorite is. But, Gene, do you think moving forward that's not going to be the case? Do you think USA is going to rally for at least the next handful of Olympics?
I think there's one name that makes that difference for the United States, and that's Anthony Edwards. I believe he will be the torch carrier. He will be the guy that wants to show up every Olympics and dominate and be like, I think you need that mentality, right? I said this before, and I'll say it again. I think LeBron has changed the mentality of NBA players. And I think at the end of his career, it will not be a bad thing for mentalities of NBA players. We went from Jordan to Kobe to LeBron. And as much as we, love LeBron and for what he does as skilled basketball, I think that Jordan to Kobe to Anthony Edwards, as far as that mentality, is what you really need. And I believe in him. It's like Joe Hendry. I believe in Anthony Edwards.
Gene, let's pivot to some NFL stuff. We talked earlier on the show about Brandon Ayuk. We're finding out more information this morning as we push forward about what happened with the New England deal. Reports coming out of New England are that an agreement was in place. A contract structure was in place. Everything was good to go, except, Gene, for the fact that Ayuk didn't want to go to New England, which, by the way, Gene, I also would not want to go to New England if I was currently playing in San Francisco, the team that just went to the Super Bowl and are favored to go back there again. I get it. Why would you want to go to some place that's cold and miserable and has a rookie head coach and has a rookie? I get it, Gene. But what are you doing, Ayuk? You want it out. Where you're literally going from a team that has been a Super Bowl favorite for the last handful of years and will be for probably the next 2 or 3 years. Where are you going to go to the Chiefs? Like, where are you trying to get to where you're going to look at it and be like, this is comparable? You're going to go to the Eagles? There's like 3 teams that you could go to where I think you could look at it and be like, this is similar. I'll take this. Any other team, Gene, you're not going to feel like it's the same.
Chris, there's a lot of times on this show where I completely agree with everything that comes out of your mouth. With this exact sentiment, and I'm not a Brandon Ayuk fan at all, but I can't fault him for not wanting to go to the worst situation in the NFL.
It's bad. It's bad.
It's the worst situation in the NFL. Like, you can't. It's the worst situation you can go to. Like, if he said, no, I don't want to go to the Browns because they're not comparable. I don't want to go to the Commanders. They have young Jaden Daniels because they're not comparable. Then I can probably give him a little. That is the worst situation in the NFL. They have the 27th ranked offensive line, the 32nd ranked wide receiving core. They have a rookie quarterback, a rookie head coach. What? The weather is awful. Why would I want to go there?
Is it worse than the Giants?
Yeah, the worst situation. Yes, I truly believe that. I think the New England Patriots, if they win 4 games this year, I will be blown away.
Gene, I talked earlier this morning. Do you think that the perception of Brandon Ayuk in the NFL by apparently everyone else outside of the 49ers has anything to do with how they're trying to handle him, how they're trying to trade him? Because he's viewed apparently by everyone else as a top 10 wide receiver. I don't think his team views him that way. I think they like him. I think they think he has value, but it seems like the entire NFL universe is saying this is a lock-in top 10 guy and he should be treated accordingly. How does that play in, do you think, when you're trying to move him and he's trying to get moved and everyone else kind of views him on this pedestal, when I think John Lynch is like, guys, like he's all right. He ain't that. Like, why we got to keep saying he's that? Like, do you think that's part of it, or do you think that has nothing to do with it?
Well, I think that John Lynch has to talk out of both sides of his mouth, right? So when he's talking to Brandon Ayuk, he's like, come on, man. Like, you've not really been a top 10 receiver up until this past year and our system and this, and that. But when he's selling them other teams, he's like, we have a top 10 wide receiver. This is what he is. I feel like that it's tough for that. I feel like anybody that really studies football and really watches the game of football, I almost feel like I'm banging my head against the wall talking to people like, Brandon Ayuk's a top 10 wide receiver. I'm like, what are you watching? Like, what plays does he make that, like, what does he do better than CeeDee Lamb, than Jamar Chase, than Justin Jefferson, than AJ Brown, like than Devontae Adams? Like, he's not even in that stratosphere. I would take both Dolphins wide receivers, both Eagles wide receivers over Brandon Ayuk. I don't think he's nearly as good as his perception is. And for him to want $35 million a year, he's out of his mind. He's crazy.
I like that trade. I would not mind having Devontae Smith. I'll take that trade. He can go to the Eagles.
I don't want that. I don't want that at all. But that's my point. Like, I think him and Amari Cooper are right around that same level. And I think that trade and the fact that the Browns are going to have to trade Amari Cooper to overpay Brandon Ayuk when they're already overpaying a quarterback that's not shown anything, it's like an all-in move for Cleveland. I don't like that move at all for them. I think the move for Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers is to trade him to the Commanders, just like David Burns said in the chat. Now, he's going to want way more than $20 million per year, so you can relax there. But you trade him to the Commanders, he's friends with Jaden Daniels, and you can be able to get Washington can overpay him. They have money to do that. They have a rookie quarterback. I think that's your move. I think you have to find the pieces to make that work.
And is that not what he's basically wanted this entire offseason? How many times have he's wearing Washington gear? He's on FaceTime with Jaden over, going into he's doing all these things that are connecting through his own means to Washington. Is that not what he ultimately wants? But Gene, we saw the rumors. It wasn't confirmed, but the rumors were that they tried to strike a deal with Washington and it fell through. Now that was, a month and a half ago or whatever it looks like. Are we going to hit a situation here? We got, less than 30 days until week 1 of the NFL season. Are we going to hit a situation here this month where John Lynch just says, you know what? I don't care. He needs to be off the team. This is where I think he wants to play. Give me your best offer and we'll take it. Like, is that where we're going to get? Like, is he a 49er week 1?
So real quick, you mentioned the Washington thing, and I just want to add this. Any intelligent general manager that knows a player wants to play for their team and is going to create havoc for every other team does not have to give up the franchise to get him. Nope. I think Jahan Dotson traded for Brandon Ayuk straight up, and then having Washington pay Brandon Ayuk should be the deal. I don't think there should be anything added. I don't think there should be compensatory picks, any of that. Do I think Brandon Ayuk is? I don't think Brandon Ayuk is. Here's a bold statement. I think by the time I get on here next week, Brandon Ayuk will not be a 49er. I think they're at that point right now where they're starting. Like, you just don't want to be the Bears with Justin Fields and be stuck with, oh, damn, now we can only get a 6th round pick for him.
Right.
Yeah, the market is dying for him.
All right, gentlemen, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a couple of quarterbacks right now. All I want you to do is I want you to forecast into the future of this season, and I want you to take a look at the calendar when week 8 rolls around. And the question is very simple. Are they the starting quarterback for their team going into the midway point of this upcoming season? Some of these are going to be easy. Some of these might be a little more challenging. Let's start with the dumpster fire that is the New England Patriots. We know that Jacoby is looking like he is going to be taking the lumps early on. Mo, week 8, is it still going to be the Jacoby Brissett show in New England, or will they have turned over Drake May and put him into the fire?
I'm going to say Jacoby takes the lumps early, and by then the Patriots will be 1-7 or something like that. So I think Drake May will take over.
I got news for you. Don't be shocked if Joe Milton takes over.
Ooh.
Drake May has looked absolutely dreadful at Patriots camp. I think that Joe Milton has really turned a lot of people's heads, and it reminds me very much of a Matt Flynn, Russell Wilson scenario to where they invested all this capital in Matt Flynn and Russell Wilson was just better.
Next one up on the list, Sam Darnold. Now, obviously, Sam Darnold was brought to the Vikings, first of all, because Kevin O'Connell apparently loves this guy. But he was brought there as a stopgap quarterback. They go out and they draft J.J. McCarthy. But Gene, in a similar situation, J.J. McCarthy has not looked good during training camp. And the Minnesota media is not being nice about how J.J. McCarthy has looked. Sometimes, the media puts the spin on it. Oh, growing pains. He's taking it. They're not doing that. They are flat out saying he doesn't look good. Now, I'm not saying Sam Darnold is going to be the next Steve Young, like some other NFL head coaches have said, Mo. But Gene, clearly Sam Darnold is the best quarterback in that room right now. Halfway point of the season, is he still their starting quarterback?
Yes. I think J.J. McCarthy, and I think he needs a full year of NFL practice and understanding NFL offenses. All you have to do is look at J.J. McCarthy's college career. He threw the ball so little at Michigan. I think he was super overhyped. I think they seen him throw a ball a couple times with his shirt off, and they were like, "Oh my God!" I've said before the draft, I think J.J. McCarthy is a bust. And I still believe that.
Mo, you know about the next coming of Steve Young. Is he still a starting quarterback there week 8?
I think he is, because I think JJ McCarthy is a project. And so I think that they would rather have Sam Darnold in there, some kind of capable quarterback play, even if they struggle. I think they'll still stick with Sam Darnold.
Mo, news coming out of training camp for the Raiders is that Aiden O'Connell has the lead when it comes to being the starting quarterback for Las Vegas, assuming it goes that way. Halfway point, is Aiden O'Connell still the starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders?
Man, I just want the Raiders to be good, because I'm such a fan of the head. I look, you want Pierce to. I want things to go well. Look, I think O'Connell might end up just being the starter throughout the season. He's young enough. It's not like they have the best quarterback room in the league, so it wouldn't shock me if he was still the starter.
Gene, is it one of those situations where they just ride with him because they don't want to give it to Gardner Minshew, who, by the way, I think is a better quarterback? But
I would agree with that.
Uncle Rico will be the starter. I think Uncle Rico. Look, I think Gardner Minshew starts the season at their starter. I don't care what the reports are saying out of. I have respect in Antonio Pierce, and I think that they'll make the right decision. Gardner Minshew is the better quarterback, and he'll give them the better opportunity to win football games.
Gene, let's talk about Will Levis in Tennessee. Titan fans think they got something in young Will Levis. You watch a lot of tape, Gene. You've seen a lot of Will Levis. Kid's got an arm, and then I feel like we pause. I think that I feel like that's what we talk about when we talk about Will Levis. Well, he's got an arm, and then there's a pause, because what comes after that, Gene? What's the next nice thing you can say about Will Levis besides he has a cannon?
I don't know. I've never been a big Will Levis guy, and he does have a big arm, but he's an awful decision maker. And I bring this up whenever I talk about Will Levis all the time, and I understand quarterbacks can grow and get better, but he got beat out by Sean Clifford for the Penn State job. Yeah. I want to be clear when we say it. The reason he was in Kentucky is because he couldn't beat out Sean Clifford for the Penn State job. Who's Sean Clifford?
That guy that beat out Will Levis.
Back in Green Bay. Like, really? No, dude. I think Will Levis will still be their starter, though, because they're going to give him a full year in this system. But it's also tough for a young quarterback to walk into the NFL, learn a system, have your coach fired, and have to learn a new system to start the NFL season without Derrick Henry. I think it's a very tough situation for Will Levis to begin with. And I think he'll be the starter, though, all year.
Mo, how about we go to the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson? We talk about this all the time. His numbers year 1 and year 2 are nearly identical. If he comes out in the first 8 games, his numbers are nearly identical again. But let's say they have a losing record. Let's say they're 3-5. 3-5 with those same numbers he had season 1 and season 2. Is he the starting quarterback moving forward into the second half of that season?
Barring an injury, yeah, I think they stick with him. They've married him to that coach. They've paid him that money. If he's not hurt, he's playing. Even if he's struggling, he's playing. Like, I feel like they have to get their money's worth, right? Some kind of way. And I don't think they have. Look at that quarterback room. Who's taking his? If he's not hurt, who's taking his spot? So I think he's going to be the quarterback, barring injury.
Gene, once you invest that kind of money, can you even bench him?
No, I don't think you can. I think the Browns have a brutal first 7 games, though. They play the Cowboys. They play at Jacksonville. They play the Eagles in Philadelphia. They play the Bengals. They play the Ravens. That's all in their first 8 games.
Yeah.
If the Cleveland Browns are 4-4 or better, you have to consider that a win for Cleveland for those first 8 games of the season. They are very tough games. Like, would you be shocked if Dallas beat them opening week? Would you be shocked if they lost at Jacksonville or at Philadelphia? Like, those games, Baltimore, Cincinnati, they split with those two. That's a very tough first 8 games. I think Deshaun will be their starter all year as long as he's healthy, because they really don't have a second option. But with that being said, if they're 4-4 through 8, they got to be happy.
Last one, Gene. Daniel Jones with the New York Giants. Remember, Drew Lock, he said this. He said this after he signed with the Giants. I chose to sign here because they told me I would have an opportunity to compete to be the starting quarterback of this team. Gene, if I'm the Giants, Jim, I'm like, oh, why we gotta say that? Why are you putting that out there? That was an us conversation, son. Why do we need to put that into the media? Daniel Jones has the money. He has the contract. The Giants aren't a good football team, though. So you look at it, and Gene, if they're 3-5, going towards the midway point, is it okay? Like, what do we expect from them 8 games into the season? We don't expect them to be 6-2. So if they're 3-5 or 2-6, isn't that kind of what we thought they would be? So is that enough to bench Dan? I mean, is that enough to bench him?
So Drew Lock is a signing to save Brian Dable's job. I want you to understand what that is, right? They signed Daniel Jones to a contract. If they they can get off that contract at the end of this year.
Yep.
Drew Lock is, hey, look, it's not me, it's Daniel. I'll show you. Here's quarterback right here. Just marry the next quarterback to me. I bet you they move away from Daniel Jones a lot quicker than people expect them to. I really believe if the Giants and the Giants have a very exact opposite of Brown's schedule, very easy start to their schedule. They're playing the Vikings, which are either Sam Darnold, a rookie quarterback. They play the Commanders with either Jaden Daniels, who's a rookie quarterback. They play the Browns, they play the Cowboys, but other than that, the Giants have a good start to the season to where they can be competitive. If they're 1-5 after 6 games, 100% they move on from Daniel Jones, and Drew Lock is the guy that could save Brian Dable's job.
Gene, what do you got going on tonight? Wire to Wire Sports.
We got the offensive line list. We got the Hogs. We get our top 10 offensive line list. We're going to talk about the Olympics. We're going to bring up, we're going to talk a little bit. Hey, listen, you got a premier matchup, Joel Embiid versus Nikola Jokic. He finally looked good in the Olympic basketball versus Brazil. Really looking forward to talking more about, and then Cottrell and Shally are just pulling away from me in trivia. So we got our trivia segment. Last week was, I don't know if you've seen our trivia segment, but we swept the board in a top 10 list and had to go past 87 to figure out Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks that went number 1. It's like, so tough. But we'll be talking about a lot of that tonight. It should be a fun night.
Gene, we always appreciate having you here on a Wednesday morning. Thanks for taking time with us, sir.
Appreciate you guys. Take care.
All right, Mo, we are going to close out the show today on this little tidbit, and it's a little tidbit that I wish they highlighted more during the actual broadcast. One of the things that they showed on social media this week was a clip from SummerSlam when Braun Breaker won the Intercontinental Championship. There was a camera up there in the Legends box, and it was just watching his dad and his uncle. And I understand that they couldn't show the entire clip because the camera was on them while the finish was happening. So they couldn't give away the finish. You have to show the pin. I get all of that. But I wish that during a replay, they went back and they took the shot where as the finish was happening in the ring and the 3 count was going down, because it was just a wholesome moment to watch both of those legends in this business tearing up, hugging each other. The DDP and some of the other legends in the box are fist bumping them because that's his boy. That's his boy down there following in his footsteps, picking up his first singles title up on the big stage on the main roster. It was just a wholesome moment, Mo.
And don't you want that? You're Rick Steiner. You want your son to have a better career than you, right? Like that had to be an awesome moment to see your son win his first belt. I can't even imagine that. So, and when you look at those old legends, I'm sure you'd probably be strapped to find a dry eye in that era. So I love that. I wish they had to let the fans in on that. We could have saw that moment as it played out. Because I might have got caught up in that too, because I watched those Steiner brothers. I watched all those legends coming up. So just to see them back there experiencing that moment, that would have been great.
And Mo, I would have paid money just to get some food and be allowed to sit in that box and just listen to the stories. I can only imagine the stories that were bouncing around in that box for that 4.5 hour show. I don't gotta talk to them. They don't gotta talk to me. Just let me hear the stories for those 4.5 hours.
So you want to be the guy over in the corner just hearing everything,
right? I just want to hear the stories, man.
And there's no shortage of stories, especially when they're on the road.
Right.
Oh my.
Like the different matches, the things that just trigger those memories, and it triggers another. Like I'm sure it was just 4+ hours of storytelling up there in that box about when back in my day. Remember when we, just all those kind of stories.
Right.
I can only imagine. Mo, take us to an end on what day is it even here, Mo?
What day
Wednesday.
Is it?
It's a Wednesday.
Take
us to an end.
We appreciate you guys for joining Chris and I this morning. Hey, make sure you check out all the great content we have at Wire to Wire Network. Wire to Wire Network, guys, we appreciate you.
Hey, we're back here tomorrow, same time, same place. We are back with our TikTok audience tomorrow on a Thursday. We got more NFL training camp stuff coming out. We are going to keep an eye on the Olympics as well. All of that and more. Coffee and sports. It's the morning show powered by Wire.